When my Uncle Rick, sent me that video, I thought I was trapped in some twisted, bitter dream. But no, it was real, a cold, cutting truth that froze my heart. I was sitting in my home office in Seattle when my phone buzzed. A message from Uncle Rick with just one line: "You need to see this. I've stayed silent long enough." Attached was a video file nearly 3 minutes long. I hit play, and in that moment everything around me seemed to freeze. On the screen was the familiar, worn-down kitchen from my family home in Tucson, Arizona. The place where I spent hours doing homework, where my mom used to bake my favorite apple pie every Christmas. But this time, that kitchen held something entirely different. My mom, Evelyn, was sitting at the head of the table, sipping her coffee and curling her lips with disdain. "Amara only helps because she owes us. Otherwise, forget it." Her voice was calm, like she was talking about laundry, not the daughter who had poured her heart and finances into keeping that home intact. My brother, Brandon, chuckled, the kind of laugh I knew too well, laced with mockery. "She acts like she's doing us some big favor. Sends a few bucks and thinks she's a saint." I nearly stopped breathing. And then, my dad, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who comforted me through every failed college application, said nothing. He just nodded. A quiet, complicit nod. One that felt like an invisible knife driving straight into my chest. I rewound that video 3 times, hoping I had misunderstood something. But no. Every word, every expression, every glance was crystal clear, like sunlight streaming through the window behind them. The kitchen still gleamed with golden light, but now that light felt like mockery. Beneath its warmth sat the 3 people I loved most in the world, tearing me down, belittling and denying everything I had done for them. After that, I couldn't hear much else. My head buzzed like a siren. My hands clenched, not in rage but in utter emptiness. Amara, 33 years old, director of engineering at a rising startup in Seattle, was the daughter they labeled a freeloader, even though I had saved that house from foreclosure 3 years ago when the housing market in Tucson crashed. They had no idea that I'd quietly wired over $218,000 through a financial company in my name, Horizon Oak LC, to cover nearly the entire mortgage. They thought they were paying the bank, but the truth was, they were living in a house I legally owned and they were only contributing a small portion. I was the one they called a burden to the family. I sat there, eyes locked on the laptop screen, as if staring long enough would somehow change the characters in that video. But there was no magic. Uncle Rick was right. I needed to see this, to wake up after years of choosing to be the silent support beam for a structure that had rotted from the inside. What rose within me wasn't just pain. It was something sharper. A brutal clarity, like waking up from a dream that had lasted 3 years too long. I hit play again. And this time I didn't cry. I memorized every word, as evidence, as a warning, as the final alarm. I sat motionless long after the video ended. What I had just witnessed wasn't just a slap in the face. It was a direct punch to the heart. But when the shock finally settled, I didn't feel broken anymore. I felt awake. I opened my laptop, typed in the password to Horizon Oak LC, the limited liability company I had founded almost 4 years ago, under the guidance of my financial advisor, Maggie Allen. Back then, I had just turned 29. My family was on the verge of losing the home they had lived in for 25 years. Arizona's real estate crisis had crushed hundreds of families, mine included. My parents were drowning, and Brandon, my brother, had just taken over Dad's real estate company. But instead of turning it around, he went on a reckless, revamped spree that drove it deeper into debt. The result: foreclosure looming over their heads. I remember the night Dad called me, voice hoarse. "Amara, we're not going to make it. Can you help?" I didn't hesitate. Even living in Seattle, fresh into a new promotion at my tech company, I was still their little girl. Helping them felt like a given. But Maggie, my trusted advisor since my startup days, warned me, if you're going to help, do it smart. Set up an LLC, buy the house under it, and let them think they're still paying a mortgage. On paper, it looks like they're making payments. But really, you're the owner. I hesitated. Isn't that deceiving them? Maggie's voice was calm, steady. You're not deceiving anyone. You're protecting yourself. Now I understood. Maggie wasn't just being cautious, she was being prophetic. I scrolled up to the top of the payment ledger. Every transaction had a receipt. In just under 4 years, I had paid more than $218,400 toward the mortgage. My family had contributed just $41,200. The rest, $177,200, was entirely on me. They'd never missed a payment, but they'd never once asked why their monthly bill seemed so manageable. They had no idea that I was the actual lender, and that Horizon Oak LC wasn't some distant financial institution. It was a legal entity I created myself quietly to help them without their pride getting in the way. Only one outsider knew the truth: Uncle Rick. He had overheard a phone conversation between me and Maggie during a family gathering over a year ago. Later, he quietly invited me out for coffee and said bluntly, "Amara, I know you're doing this out of love. But they don't see you as a capable adult. You're supporting them with kindness while they're feeding off that kindness with contempt." Back then, I was still naive and replied, "They're family, Uncle. They raised me after all." Uncle Rick just sighed, eyes weary like someone who'd seen too much. "Are you sure they'll protect you if you ever fall? Or do they only love the version of you who wires money on time?" Looking back, his words were like a slow rain soaking deep into the soil. When that video surfaced, that soil had ripened, and what sprouted wasn't gratitude anymore but bitter clarity. I looked at the house address, 3448 West Meadow Lane, the place I had grown up in. Now legally it belonged to Horizon Oak LLC. And because I had signed every contract under my name, I held full legal authority over any clause in case of breach. I pulled up the original purchase agreement that Maggie had drafted 3 years and 8 months ago. There was a clause I had nearly forgotten. If the tenants, namely my parents, were more than 15 days late on any payment, Horizon Oak had the right to fully reclaim the property under a priority purchase option. I smiled, not a smile of joy but one of realization. I was no longer the daughter begging for validation from a family that only knew how to take. I was now a woman holding the law in her hands. And I knew exactly what was coming. The next payment deadline was just 11 days away. 2 days after I watched the video, Uncle Rick sent me another message. I was in a boardroom prepping for a presentation to the leadership team when my phone buzzed. The message had just 2 words: "Look now." Attached were 5 screenshots. I didn't know why, but my hands went cold, even though the room temperature hadn't changed. Instinct told me everything had just moved to a different level. That night, back home, I brewed a cup of chamomile tea and sat down on the sofa. My phone lit up and each screenshot appeared like a razor blade. A Facebook group chat titled Family Financial Planning, a name that sounded like a place for collective budgeting, investments, and support. But its contents were anything but. "Brandon, I just checked Amara's salary. She makes nearly 160 grand a year, not even counting stocks. Lives alone, no husband, no kids. What's she even doing with all that money?" "Mom, Evelyn, exactly. She's living it up in Seattle, eating organic, doing meditation, buying self-help books. Meanwhile, her dad's taking blood pressure meds every month. Brandon, we should all agree she needs to pay more. At least 2 grand extra a month. She's single, no dependents. Dad, Harold, keep it sweet. Don't pressure her too much. Talk about mom's health, the medical bills." He's soft. She's never had the guts to say no directly. I leaned back, my head resting against the couch. The feeling of knowing you've been used in such a calculated way, it's more than pain. It shakes you to your bones. Being single, that was my choice. I had the chance to get married, maybe start a family like everyone else. But I prioritized work and personal peace. And now that choice was being weaponized against me. One more message appeared at the end of the thread. "Brandon, if she refuses, we still have that thing from her senior year. Time to remind her of that debt." I gripped my phone tightly. The thing they referred to was the time I borrowed $4,000 from Dad's company account to cover tuition, when the bank delayed releasing my scholarship funds. But what they conveniently left out: I had asked Dad's permission before withdrawing the money. I repaid the full amount in just 6 weeks, including an extra $500 in voluntary interest. I kept every email confirmation from Dad, and even the repayment receipt. But to them, the truth mattered far less than holding leverage. I texted Uncle Rick, "How did you get these screenshots?" He replied almost instantly, "Your dad uses my computer every time he visits. They don't know how to log out of their Facebook account." "But Amara, should I stop? Can you handle this?" I paused for a few seconds before replying, "I've endured it for 4 years. It's time I wake up." That evening, I sat in front of my screen, opening one payment file after another, line by line, clause by clause. It was no longer about helping. It was about protecting myself from manipulation wrapped in the label of family. In bright red ink, I wrote a line across my notebook. Due date: the 12th of this month. 1 day late and the purchase option activates immediately. They'd never missed a payment before. But this time would be different. I wouldn't cover the shortfall again. No more safety nets. No more rescues. Just them and the consequences. The night outside my Seattle window was cold and still, but I felt more clear-headed than ever. They had once called me a burden. Now they were about to learn what a real burden felt like. When someone stops carrying them. I didn't rage. I didn't explode. I didn't scream in anyone's face. I'd learned from my career in tech that sometimes, silence is the most dangerous line of code. And in this case, my silence was the signal that a system had begun quietly running in the background. After reading through the group chat from Family Financial Planning, I unlocked the safe and pulled out the original purchase contract, filed under Horizon Oak LLC. Under the glow of my desk lamp, I scanned each dry line of legalese like revisiting an old vow. I stopped at page 17. The section titled, Special Clause, Purchase Option. In the event that the tenants, Harold Evelyn M., fail to fulfill payment obligations for more than 15 days, the owner, Horizon Oak LLC, has the full right to activate the purchase option and acquire the entire property at the previously agreed upon price, without needing further consent. That clause was Maggie's idea, my financial advisor and legal counsel. At the time I had hesitated. What if my parents find out? I had asked. If they don't intend to default, there's nothing to worry about, Maggie had answered flatly. Now, I realized Maggie hadn't just been speaking legally. She had seen further than I ever had. I looked at the calendar. It was the 2nd. The next payment was due on the 12th. Over the next 10 days they would, as usual, wire their small portion, about $1,100, thinking the rest would be handled automatically, just like every month before. But this time would be different. I logged into the company account and accessed the recurring payment system. I canceled my share of the payment, nearly $4,800 each month, which I'd been quietly covering since 2021. No warning. No explanation. Just a single click, and the storm I had programmed began to roll in. I kept up appearances. Still replied politely when Mom texted, "Busy week at work?" Still liked her photos of family meals. Still left Brandon's coffee invite on read when he said, "Let's talk about the future." They had no idea that the future they were talking about was already in my hands, and I was rewriting it from scratch. I called Maggie. She answered after the second ring. "Amara," her voice calm, measured. "Are you ready for them to be held accountable?" I took a deep breath. Not accountability. Consequences. We went over every clause again. The purchase option, the breach terms, the notification procedures, and the eviction rules, if necessary. Everything checked out. Nothing they could contest. "I don't want to throw them out," I admitted. "But I can't keep being their walking wallet." "And you don't have to," Maggie said. "They've been living like your kindness is a debt they're owed. Now it's time they understand it was a gift. And gifts can be taken back." In the days that followed, I continued going to work as usual. But in my mind, I was a programmer writing the final lines of a self-executing script. I checked the company's bank email daily. Nothing out of the ordinary, just as I expected. The family still believed everything was running smoothly. Then came the 12th. They sent in their portion on time, same amount. But my share was no longer there to complete the puzzle. On the 14th, the bank system sent an automatic notice. Insufficient funds to complete the transaction. Please pay the remaining balance within 48 hours. I didn't forward it. No reminders. No explanations. I let the system do the rest. On the 16th, Maggie sent an email confirmation. Missed payment officially recorded. Purchase option eligible for execution after 12:01 a.m. on the 17th. I sat in the dark of my home office watching the wall clock tick minute by minute. For the past 4 years, I had always stepped in first to shield them from the fall. But now I had stepped back and let them fall, straight into the recklessness they had sown. On the 17th, just hours after Horizon Oak LC's system auto-logged the payment breach, I got a text from my mother. "Dear Amara, the family's doing dinner this weekend. We need to talk about something important. Sunday at 6 p.m., okay?" I stared at the message, a small smirk forming on my lips. That important matter definitely wasn't a reunion or a surprise hug. I knew they'd started sensing something was off, likely from the bank alerts. Still, I replied short and sweet with a heart emoji. "Sure, Mom. I've missed your beef stew." I drove the 2-hour stretch from Seattle back to Tucson. The Arizona sun was still scorching and dusty, but it couldn't burn away the chill that had settled inside me. House number 3448 West Meadow Lane, the place I used to call home, still looked the same. But now it wasn't a place of memories. It was an asset. A receipt. A lesson. My mother greeted me with a dramatic hug. "Amar, you've lost weight. You've been working too hard, haven't you?" I gave a soft laugh. "I still have enough strength to come home for dinner, Mom. Don't worry." Inside, the aroma of beef stew filled the kitchen. I guessed it was a strategic choice. The childhood comfort food that always brought a sense of safety. But tonight it was a sugar-coated trap. Brandon was already at the table, crisp white shirt tucked in, hair slicked back, smirk set just right. "So you made it. Good. We have a few things we'd like you to understand." I sat across from him, poured myself a glass of water. It felt like a board meeting. Only I was the investor and they were pitching their family plan. My father, Harold, stepped out from his office holding some papers. I caught a glimpse of a faint bank logo at the top. Just as I suspected, the payment failure had triggered alerts. My mother served the food, gently placing her hand on my shoulder like it was some kind of wholesome reunion. "Amara," she began, "you know how tough the economy's been. Your father and we're feeling it too. And Dad's real estate firm is going through some transition." Brandon cut in with a faux pensive tone. My father cleared his throat, flipping through the papers like he was at a financial summit. "The monthly mortgage is becoming unmanageable. You work in tech. A stable job, strong income. So the family thought that maybe you could cover a bit more each month." Mom finished the sentence, eyes soft and coaxing. "Just around $2,000, honey. I'm sure that's nothing for you." I bit my lip, feigned contemplation. Then I placed my fork down, looking straight into her eyes. "I thought I already helped. For years now." Brandon laughed as if I'd told a joke. "Helped? You just paid your share. I've had to keep Dad's business running. Some nights I'm up until 2 a.m. doing loan paperwork." "Oh, you mean those fake loan docs to inflate your sinking company's value?" I nearly said it, but instead I smiled. "All right," I said calmly. "I'll think about it. I've got some other financial commitments I'm juggling right now." Brandon flinched a little. Maybe he hadn't expected me to stay composed. No yelling. No flat-out refusal. Just suspense. Like someone lighting the fuse on a slow-burning cord. After dinner, I excused myself to wash my hands and walked toward Dad's office. The door was slightly ajar. I paused as I heard whispers inside. "If she says no, should we bring up that last year tuition incident?" Brandon's voice. "Or email her company's HR. You know someone there. Say she's moody, unstable. Who knows? They might start paying attention." My mom suggested it as casually as if she were planning to bake cookies. I stood frozen. This wasn't a family anymore. This was a campaign. And I was the target. I returned to the dinner table, said my goodbyes, received one last sweet hug from my mother and walked out of the house. Once I reached my car, I didn't turn on any music. I just opened my phone, pulled up the Horizon Oak contract and pressed one simple command. Activate the purchase clause. I whispered, "The show's over. Time to drop the curtain." I thought I was emotionally armored after that performance of a dinner. But a few days later, Uncle Rick sent a message with 3 words that made me stop breathing for a second. "They got in." Immediately after came a series of screenshots. My skin went cold as I opened each one. Every image was a snippet from the family financial planning group chat. No longer a space for financial talk, but a covert, quiet, malicious operation. Brandon. When she came home on Sunday, she logged into the house Wi-Fi like always. My mom, Evelyn, same as last time. She logged into iCloud without realizing our Wi-Fi saves everything. Brandon, I checked the backup files. There's a folder named Horizon Oak Internal. My dad, Harold, so she really owns the company. She's the lender, not the bank. Another message appeared and my hand tightened around my phone. Evelyn, we'll give her one last chance. If she doesn't send more money, we bring up the tuition thing from her final year. Brandon, and if that doesn't work, I'll have my friend in her HR department send an anonymous letter saying Amara's showing signs of instability. Past anxiety. Maybe she's using company data for personal use. I sat still on my sofa, eyes staring out the window. The rain in Seattle was falling lightly, each drop sharp and cold, echoing how I felt inside. They had broken into my iCloud account through the house Wi-Fi, the place I once believed was safe. The last time I visited, I had accidentally allowed my iPad to sync without using a VPN. One small mistake, but enough for them to trace the name Horizon Oak LLC and uncover the truth I had protected for 4 years. I almost laughed. They didn't bother reading the full mortgage contract, but they managed to find the one file they were never meant to see. I searched my old emails and found the 2012 thread from my final year in college. When my scholarship was delayed, I had to borrow $4,000 from my dad's company to pay tuition. I still had his written approval, the repayment receipts, full amount returned within 6 weeks, with an extra $350 in voluntary interest. I never hid it. But now they were twisting it into some distorted trump card, to blackmail, threaten, and destroy me. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to Kate Weston, the head of HR at my company. I laid everything out clearly, attached Rick's screenshots, and summarized the old tuition matter. I requested that the company document this situation in case of future defamation or reputation sabotage by family members. That same afternoon, Kate called me. "Thank you, Amara, for being transparent. We have a protocol for situations like this. If there's any third-party contact concerning your identity, our legal team will intervene immediately." I exhaled, a small breath of relief in the middle of an oncoming storm. That evening, I received an anonymous email sent to my work address. The content was vague, dripping with innuendo. A management-level employee is experiencing serious psychological issues. She may be using internal data for personal purposes. Please take caution. I just smiled and forwarded it to Kate. "Their campaign has begun," I texted Uncle Rick. He replied with just one sentence, "So has ours." I reopened the Horizon Oak contract. In the folder I once thought no one would touch, I created a new PDF. Notice activation.pdf. Along with it, I drafted a formal notice of ownership transfer and updated rental terms for the following month, as stated in the agreement. I never wanted it to go this far. But they chose this path first. If they wanted to turn me into a walking wallet, then I would show them what it means to be a woman who holds the law in her hands. Monday the 18th. Just 4 days left before the final payment deadline. It felt like I was sitting in front of a ticking countdown clock in a suspense film, but this time I was the one who wrote the script. That morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. I didn't want to be disturbed. It was just me, a cup of black coffee, and a stack of documents waiting to be turned into legal weapons. Maggie, my legal advisor, arrived right on time as always, punctual and meticulous down to every period and semicolon. "Today we seal the box, Amara. Are you ready?" she said, flipping open her silver laptop. I nodded, my gaze unwavering. More certain than ever. We went over the entire Horizon Oak LLC file. The original home purchase contract from 2021. The memorandum of purchase rights after payment default. The automated warning letter sent by the bank on May 16th. System confirmation. The family had submitted their portion of the payment, but the additional $4,800 from my company, which had quietly supported them for 4 years, was no longer there. Maggie opened a new file titled, Notice of Default and Ownership Transfer. This is the official document notifying that Horizon Oak will activate the buyback clause. As soon as the bank confirms insufficient payment, you become the legal owner of the house. I looked at the red stamp. A rush of both relief and ache filled my chest. My family was about to discover who had really been behind the wall they thought was some faceless bank. After signing all the paperwork, I sent Kate, the head of HR at my company, a copy of the legal report detailing unauthorized access to my personal accounts, along with all the screenshots Uncle Rick had provided. Kate wasn't surprised. They sent a second anonymous email yesterday. This time, claiming you took client data to use for a private business. I curled my lip. They didn't just want money, they wanted to destroy my career for daring not to submit. Then we act first, I said. Kate nodded. Legal has already contacted the Arizona Compliance Office. If there's any further threatening or defamatory action, we'll initiate a no-contact legal order. I texted Uncle Rick. The pawn has pulled back. Time for the rook to move in. May 22nd. The final payment deadline. I went about my day like it was any regular Friday, as if I were just another independent, successful woman with a clear plan for everything. But in reality, I was waiting for a collapse, and I had my umbrella ready. At exactly 9:07 a.m., an email arrived in Horizon Oak LLC's inbox from the bank. Transaction declined. The May mortgage payment was not completed due to insufficient funds. Please contact us within 48 hours. I didn't smile. I didn't sigh. I just stared at the screen and forwarded the email to Maggie. Subject: Buyback clause activation, official. At 9:20 a.m. I received the first message from my mother. Sweetheart, something strange happened with the bank payment. They said it was short. Do you know anything about it? Then came a missed call from my father, followed by a message from Brandon. What's going on with the mortgage? Don't tell me you. I didn't respond. No explanations. I just sent them one email, with a short, direct subject line, regarding property ownership transfer at 3448 W. Meadow Lane. Attached was the official PDF notice from Horizon Oak, with a clear closing statement. As of May 23rd, Horizon Oak LLC is the legal owner of the property at the above address. A monthly rental agreement will be established. The first rent payment must be completed by June 5th to avoid eviction proceedings under Arizona state law. I knew they wouldn't believe it. I knew they'd react with shock, rage, or some theatrical attempt to pull me back into being the old walking wallet. This time the stage belonged to me. And I was no longer a passive audience member. At 9:43 a.m. my phone rang. The screen showed a familiar name, Mom. I took a deep breath and picked up. Amara. What is going on? The bank says we breached the contract. They said the payment wasn't enough. Her panicked voice was high-pitched as usual whenever something didn't go her way. In the background I could hear my father's voice barking at someone, probably Brandon, about the bank account. There is no bank, I replied, my voice calm and clear. The lender is Horizon Oak LLC. That is, my company. The other end fell completely silent. The pause stretched long enough that I could almost hear the wind outside their window. You, what? My mother whispered. I've been the owner of that house for the past 4 years, I continued, emotionless. I created a company to help the family keep the house. They thought they were paying a bank, but the majority of the monthly amount, nearly 80%, was actually paid by me. You lied to your own family, my father's voice thundered, this time directly. I don't believe it. This is a setup. You're trying to steal the house. I gripped the phone a little tighter, but my tone stayed composed. I don't need to steal anything. You both signed the papers willingly. There were lawyers, notaries, and records. I'm simply exercising the rights the law provides. My mother began to sob. So now, what does this mean? I opened the document I had prepared on my screen and read it word for word like a formal notice. As of today, the house is officially owned by Horizon Oak LLC. You and Brandon are now tenants under a month-to-month lease. The first rent payment of $2,950 is due by the 5th of next month. Failure to pay on time will result in eviction proceedings under Arizona state law. You're planning to throw your parents out on the street? Brandon screamed, his voice echoing clearly like he was standing right next to the phone. You really think you're somebody? I smiled. I think I'm the person who supported that house for 4 years while you all sat around planning how to exploit me and trash me behind my back. Then I emphasized each word. Family is not an excuse to belittle, extort, or destroy someone just because they've stayed silent too long. Silence again. You're tearing this family apart, my father muttered. You'll regret this. I paused for a moment, then replied slowly. No. I've already regretted it, regretted letting it get this far. I hung up. No trembling hands. No tears. Over the next 15 minutes, my phone buzzed nonstop with calls from distant relatives, messages from aunts and uncles who hadn't bothered to check in on me once in the last 3 years. Amara, you should forgive. They're your parents. What family problem can't be solved by sitting down and talking? I didn't respond to a single one. Everything was archived into a folder labeled Legal Records. Because I knew that when things touched people's self-interest, family could quickly morph into strangers with a taste for someone else's compassion. That evening I called Maggie. She picked up after just 2 rings. It's all out, I said. They know. And they're furious. Maggie wasn't surprised. So, what do you want to do now? I looked out the window. Seattle was still cold, but I could feel the warmth slowly returning to my chest. I want to give them a choice. Pay rent on time and keep what little dignity they have left. Or don't and move out by the 5th. Maggie nodded. And are you ready to sign the eviction papers? I didn't hesitate. Yes. In my inbox, I saw Kate's reply, head of HR. We've received another anonymous email. However, as agreed, your file remains secure, and your position is unaffected. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. A soft click sounded. It was me shutting my laptop. Today I didn't win. I simply stopped losing. And sometimes that's the most beautiful kind of victory. 3 months after the ownership transfer notice was sent, the house at 3448 West Meadow Lane, the place I once grew up and called home, finally stood empty. My family had resisted, delayed, begged, even threatened, but in the end the law did not side with those who disrespected it. I gave them 3 chances to sign a month-to-month lease and pay on time. But they didn't pay a single cent. Instead, they sent me a string of long-winded emails listing their sacrifices, blaming me, calling me ungrateful, cold-hearted, and even threatening to sue me for abusing family trust. Brandon, the self-proclaimed backbone of the family business, was the one who launched the most foolish attempt. He filed a complaint with the Real Estate Ethics Board, accusing me of abusing power to seize property from the elderly. Unfortunately for him, the Horizon Oak Company name, the sale terms, and the notarized legal documents dated back 4 years. All of them proved not only that I was acting lawfully but also far too kindly. But he didn't stop. When that failed, Brandon was caught illegally accessing internal data from my company through the family Wi-Fi and sharing information with third parties in an attempt to blackmail me. The Arizona Professional Ethics Board launched a formal investigation. Less than 6 weeks later, Brandon's professional license was suspended. One of the last emails he ever sent me said, "Congratulations, Amara. You destroyed my entire career, but at least I still have a real family and you don't." I didn't reply. Because he didn't understand, I had just started building a real family. With myself. As for my parents, they moved into a small rental apartment about 25 minutes away. No more wide lawn, no more double garage, no more family dinners, used to manipulate emotions. They also haven't contacted me, at least not through the phone numbers or email addresses I still use. I've blocked all of them. Not out of hate but because I no longer owe them my silence. When the house was officially empty, I visited alone on a Saturday afternoon, carrying a photo album and a cardboard box. I walked through each room. The living room where I used to watch cartoons, the kitchen with the burn mark on the wall from my first cooking attempt, the stairwell corner where I wrote in my journal at 15. I didn't cry. I smiled. I hadn't lost a home, I'd reclaimed my worth inside it. 2 months later, I sold the house for nearly twice its value from 4 years ago. I put part of the money into savings. The rest I used to launch a small foundation called the Open Door Project, a program that supports women who've been financially exploited, emotionally manipulated, or turned into invisible ATMs by their own families, just because they stayed silent. I didn't aim to save the world. I just wanted anyone like me, a quiet girl who tried to be kind, who always put family above herself, to have a place to start again with real support. On the first day the Open Door Project was officially registered, Uncle Rick and Aunt Linda came to my house in Seattle with a homemade cake. On top, Uncle Rick had written in frosting, "Family is where you choose to belong, not where you're trapped." I laughed and hugged him. "If it weren't for you, I'd probably still be stuck in that thing called conditional love," I said. Uncle Rick gently patted my shoulder. No, Amara. You just needed a little truth. The awakening was all yours. That night, I opened my laptop and typed the final line in the case file. Family cannot exist where it demands you sacrifice your self-worth, your career, and your sense of justice. I choose to be my own family, and for the first time in my life, I feel at peace. I clicked save and closed the laptop. Outside the window, summer had begun to stir. And I knew a new season had truly started. Amara's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes, the people who hurt us most deeply are the ones we once called family. But it's from that betrayal we learn to rise, protect our worth, and draw healthy boundaries. True family cannot exist without respect and honesty. In real life, everyone deserves the right to choose their family, not by blood but by kindness and humanity. What do you think about Amara's decision? Would you have done the same in her shoes? Leave your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more real-life stories filled with emotion and powerful lessons.